Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Tammy Nelson, and I am the author and editor of Integrative Sex and Couples Therapy, a therapist's guide to new and innovative approaches. And I'm thrilled to have with us today one of my co-authors. He's one of my favorite people. He actually just gave me 30 seconds of therapy that I think are going to change my life. He's Dr. Neil Cannon, and he is the author of Relationship Counseling and Sex Therapy with Kinky Clients. It's chapter 8 in our new book. And I'm so happy to have you here, Neil. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks, Tammy. It's so good to be here with you.
I'm thrilled to have this chapter in the book. I think it makes it contemporary, it makes it interesting, and it makes it really practical for both new clinicians and more advanced practitioners.
Yeah, I agree. I was excited to be able to have the opportunity to write it with Amanda and, really focus in on how to provide great care to kinky folks.
Yeah, which, is an absolute specialty. And yet across the board, if you're going to be a sex and a couples therapist, you need to know this. You need to know how to do this. And Neil Cannon is an ASEX certified sex therapist and a supervisor. He's in Denver, Colorado. And he's an instructor at the University of Michigan School of Social Work in their sexual health certificate program, as well as a professor of marriage and family therapy at the Denver Family Institute. And he is a master couples counselor and expert who treats BDSM and kink. He's also the board chair of a community mental health clinic, which I wanted to say a little bit more about because as we were talking earlier, I found out that that the people in that institute offer low-cost therapy in the Denver area, and he's been there for like 12 years. He's also a volunteer at the Red Cross Mental Health Disaster Organization, which is very, very impressive, especially during this time. And the other thing that I know about Neil, aside from the fact that he's a brilliant supervisor and people adore him, is that he is choosing to thrive during this time of the pandemic, which is actually very helpful to me because it's a very conscious decision. And at a time when none of us really have control over what's happening in the world, it's an intention that we can all hang on our refrigerator and put on a sticky over our laptop so that we remember that there are things that we do have control over. So thank you so much for that, Neil. That's very helpful.
You're welcome. It's the intention I set really early in this pandemic when we shut down, and I use it for myself and I work with my clients around it. And I think it's like one of the things that makes the pandemic so hard is the uncertainty and the loss of control for people, right? And so what we have control over is how we choose to be. So I'm choosing to thrive. Don't always do it, but that's my intention.
It's so good because I know some days are so much harder than others, and so this just hits home on a good point. So thank you. Mm-hmm. I think that's helpful, and I think it says a lot about why you're a good therapist, particularly with kink clients. I know you and Amanda Holmberg-Sasek wrote this chapter together, which being a co-author is a challenge, but it's also great because you get to work with a bunch of authors like I did on this book, which was a blessing. I loved it. I think I'm a really good editor, maybe much better than an author, but it's not easy working together on a project, but it seems like you guys really had a good experience doing this chapter.
Yeah, Amanda and I have written before together. And so we were both choosing to re-engage in another writing project because we like working with each other. And I thought that as we went through the process, one of the things that I really enjoyed was actually getting to see your edit comments because you made some really good questions. You had great questions, you had good comments, and it really helped us write a better chapter. And I know all the people, I shouldn't say all, but I know most all the people who were your other authors. And, you had a great list of, you pulled together a great team.
Very impressive authors, yeah. Definitely. Mm-hmm. Including you.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about why you wrote this particular chapter, because I know you're good at a lot of things, but this is definitely one of your expertise, like working with kinky clients and being a kink competent therapist. That was the whole point of this chapter, that you have to really be competent in this area. And I've used this chapter so many times with the people that I supervise. It's so well done. It comes straight to the point and it gives great interventions. So can you tell us a little bit more about it and why you wrote it and how it can help people?
Yeah, thank you. I've been working with kinky clients for, my entire career, and it is one of my specialties. My doctoral dissertation was on a psychological assessment of BDSM practitioners. And so I just had a lot of experience with it. And I have a lot of passion for it because I've seen so many kinky clients get shamed by their therapists, not generally by sex therapists, but by general therapists. And they get shamed, they live a life often, it's less so now, but there's so much of it that's secretive. And sometimes secrecy our soul, kind of depends what's going on and why we were keeping the secret. And it's also okay to not come out. It's also okay to invite people in that we choose to invite into our lives. So I just wanted to work with Amanda to get like what we do in a place that was easy and accessible and clear and practical.
Yeah, it is too. It's very accessible. It's very practical. And so is there something you can tell us about the chapter that you noticed writing it, that you felt like this is really important for people to know as a clinician? This is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like for me, it was interesting. Like one of the biggest things that I personally got out of writing it was it forced me to take what I do in a clinical situation with clients and like get it into a process. So there's steps, because one thing I know about therapists is therapists love steps. And so I kind of got it into, a few critical steps. And, the first one, and it sounds like such a no duh, but is really like building therapeutic alliance or creating a safe social engagement system. Because with kinky clients, they're never more than this far away from being shamed by their therapist. And so in order to create that space that where we don't shame and that we are strength-based, we have to take our time. That I think what happens to a lot of sex therapists, especially younger sex therapists or newer, is they kind of get this thing like, now I'm a sex therapist, I have to fix this. I have to fix the problem that's in the room that the client's brought to me. I just tried to remind everybody that no, actually going slow is going faster. Let's make it, let's create the space so clients really can explore and go to the place they want to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. Everybody wants like a quick intervention. What do I have to do? Tell me the steps. Tell me what I should tell them because this is the problem. So what do I do? Yeah. And what you're saying is you really need to help them feel safe. You need to create a relationship with them immediately so that, they don't feel bad. They don't feel shame.
Yeah. And little things like letting new clients know, because a lot of times a lot of the focus in this book was treating couples, or my chapter was on treating couples. And one of the things that is the most common that we see with kinky couples is one person wants kink, one person doesn't, or they want different flavors of kink, right? There's a conflict. There's a reason they're in there. And so just a little thing like letting the kinky partner know that you're never going to tell them it shouldn't be kinky or it's not okay to want what they want, and letting the non-kinky partner know that you're never going to tell them they ought to be kinky or do something that's going to violate their dignity, right? We'll help them navigate it, but it's always their choice. And I don't have a dog in this fight.
Right. You don't have a particular judgment one way or the other, regardless of what they're into.
There might be consequences if they can't figure out how to close this gap, but we'll talk about those and figure them out.
So can you just maybe back up a second for people that don't really know, like, what is kinky? Like, what does that mean, for beginning practitioners or non-practitioners that are picking up the book?
Sure. I mean, kinky is the umbrella term for everything from BDSM, which is bondage and discipline, dominance and submission, sadism and masochism, to fetishes and, anything under that umbrella or that category.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyone coming in who's got any kind of interest or living that lifestyle, so it's sort of like a wide continuum, and they might be doing it together, or there might be a conflict that one person wants it and the other person doesn't. Mm-hmm. And that's really the work that you're doing with the couples. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the whole while, there's usually a component of de-shaming, right? We would call it, we'd say normalizing. But we really are working on helping people talk about something with each other or accept something about themselves that tends to be, have components of shame. Sometimes even if the client doesn't really recognize it as such. Yeah.
I really like that, like de-shaming, and even if the client doesn't recognize it, because a lot of times they're coming in with their own history of shame around their behavior or around talking to their partner about it.
Mm-hmm. I always tell couples early on, sometimes the first session, second session, everybody has an erotic template. Erotic templates are what turn us on and what turn us off. I think about erotic templates like thumbprints. There's, everybody has a thumbprint. None of them are the same, and there's not one that's better than another. Some people love to kiss. Some people don't like to kiss at all. Some people want to be spanked. Some people don't want to be spanked.
Well, and you can't really change your thumbprint.
No.
Just what you're implying, right? Like, there's not much you can do about it. So that's good and bad news for couples.
Yeah, if somebody was, wanted to play Cowboys and Indians and get tied up, lose on purpose and get tied up when they were 6, there's a really good chance that if they still like to be tied up when they're 26, that they might want to be tied up when they're 46. I'm just saying.
Just saying. And so what advice would you have for a therapist who has a couple where one wants to play Cowboys and Indians, although maybe we shouldn't call it that for cultural reasons, but let's say they want to get tied up and they have that fantasy and the other partner is like, well, you want to be tied up, but I want to be tied up. I don't want to be the person that ties you up. Like, they have sort of opposite ends of the DS spectrum, the dominant submissive spectrum.
So as we go through the process that's outlined in the book, ultimately we get to this spot. One of the steps is helping couples collaborate on a solution. And I use those words really intentionally because in the BDSM and the kink world, there's a lot of negotiation that takes place, which is fine, but I don't want my couples negotiating. I want my couples collaborating. So that is one of the last steps in trying to figure out how to do this. But until there's a clear understanding of exactly what everybody wants, and that's what's one of the steps is, create a clear understanding, because people a lot of times don't know exactly what each other wants and doesn't want. So we help them flush that out. And then from there, we go to building empathy. Because until people really have deep empathy for what this desire means to each other and how they feel about it on a deep, heartfelt level, it's really hard to get to that final step of collaborating on a solution. So it's never as linear as that, right? Because that's, therapy, just as Brene Brown says, it just doesn't fit neatly into a bento box, if only. But that is kind of the process.
Yeah, so to really get to this place where people can understand and have empathy for the other person, they don't have to agree and they don't have to do it, but they have to sort of get it.
Right. Yeah, like it's in that process, it's like letting everybody understand, like listening isn't agreeing. Listening is just listening.
Yeah, that's a great line too. Listening isn't agreeing. Because a lot of times people listen to get their point across, and not necessarily to be heard. They listen to be right. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And you're a great imago therapist. And so like, that's a great technique as part of this process for treating kinky couples. In the book, I introduce heartfelt hearing, which is something I created, 10 years or so ago. And I use it with my clients all the time. And this is actually the first place there's been handouts and little things written about it. It's the first place where I actually really demoed it in a book. So I was really grateful for the opportunity to do that too.
Yeah, and now it's published. It's yours. So just give us one example of a heartfelt hearing, and so that people can take something with them that they might practice even in their own relationship.
Mm-hmm. Heartfelt hearing is a really active way to have couples talk to each other. So when I'm doing heartfelt hearing, I am really engaged. I am like sitting, I roll my chair in, I am in the middle of these two people, coaching them, taking turns. One of them speaks, one of them listens, and kind of setting up guidelines and processes so that they can talk to each other and feel heard. And this one conversation might take an hour, just on one topic. But by the time we're done, the person who's talking feels like they really were able to get out what's there, because I'm helping the person who's listening to ask questions. So I'm not asking questions to the client. They're talking to each other, and I'm kind of prodding along. What would happen if you asked this? You know.
Yeah.
And
So you're really giving them an active listening experience of like really slowing it down, really being empathetic, teaching them to really hear without responding from their own stuff.
Slicing it thinner, and I'm teaching the listener how to be curious, how to lean into the things that are uncomfortable instead of running away from the things that are uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Which is so what we do naturally, right? Mm-hmm. We react and get reactive and respond with our old stuff. Yeah.
And take away the whole idea that, they don't need to think about a response. Next Tuesday, they're going to have all day to talk about whatever's going on for them.
Right. So they don't have to agree or disagree about the spanking. They can just be curious about, okay, tell me more about what that's like and what you want and what you're thinking, what you're feeling.
Yeah. And how does it feel if spanking is your thing? How does it feel emotionally when I spank you? How does it feel emotionally when I don't? What's it like for you to be able to be submissive? And, you hear people with responses like, well, if I can't be submissive, if that part of my life is taken away, it's like taking away my breath, right? And then that comes with a lot of deep emotions. And the partner, partners that are good partners want their partners to be happy, right? Yeah. So when we hear it sometimes on these heartfelt places, it helps us be more open and to creative ideas and creative solutions.
Yeah, that's really lovely, actually. And I really appreciate how you stay with people, and I can imagine they feel really safe with you and very held in the session.
So,
yeah, I can imagine that you are a very non-judgmental clinician.
Mm-hmm.
I'm laughing because I can't imagine anyone feeling judged in your sessions.
I hope not.
Has there ever been anything that you've heard that you've been like, oh, I don't know if I could deal with this?
Well,
you don't have to tell me what it is. I'm just wondering.
Well, no, I'll tell you. I went into two parts. One is, on that first thing you said, when I teach my sexual diversity class at Denver Family Institute, I start with if you only take away one thing from this class, it's to learn how to not shame a client, right? Because that's my internal mantra, is always staying on the balls of my feet, to never shame a client, verbal, nonverbal. It's so easy to have happen, and it can happen in an instant. And then the other part you asked is, is there anything that's just like too freaky for me? No, like I have countertransference like every therapist, and I have things I react to, and I have feelings, and it affects my work. Of course, that's what makes us good therapists, is when we know about it. When it comes to sexual disclosures, I have so much, education, training, and clinical hours. Like, I don't get icked out by sexual things. If a client tells me that they've, poached an endangered species, I do, I have reactions to that because I'm not trained in that, but I hear things like that, right? And then, but my mantra is to not shame the client, but I can feel it on a deeper level, right? Sex is just what we do.
So true. Like sex is our job. Yeah. So true. So true. Well, Neil, is there anything that you wanted to add, either for the new clinician or even the advanced clinician, advice that you might have towards being a more kink competent therapists. They certainly should read the chapter, and they certainly should get more training and definitely supervision. And everyone should be a certified sex and couples therapist, because I think that's where the field is going. But if you had, just a couple minutes to give people advice, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so I think if you're a really new therapist and you don't really know much about kink, I think there's this fear that if they ask clients to explain what they want, that clients shouldn't have to teach the therapist about kink, for instance. And then the other end of the spectrum is for the really experienced therapists, and especially somebody who's really competent in kink, it's easy to make assumptions about a certain thing, right? A certain behavior or fantasy or fetish or whatever it is, because of so much experience. So I think the key for all of us, wherever we are on the spectrum, is to become the expert about the client, right? So that's how you become a true expert in BDSM and kink, is to really understand your client. And then we're doing our job.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So not to worry about whether or not you are becoming an expert about the sort of world of kink through your clients, because there's some controversial ideas about that, like don't ask your clients, ask your clients, don't become educated through them, do ask them more, but really to focus on become an expert about your client.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
That it's okay to ask them about them and learn as much as you can about them and their life and who they are.
Yeah,
and their world.
What kink means to them, and what is it that they love about this. So joining can be a great thing too.
So joining them in what they love about it is a great way to show them that, they don't have to be ashamed or embarrassed about it.
Mm-hmm. And for a lot of people, kinky clients, sometimes we're the first person the client's ever told. And so we're in this really honored space to be able to let somebody tell their story. And it's just our job to help make it safe, tease it out, let them know that they can talk about anything in the room with us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really an honor to have that relationship with them.
Oh.
Yeah, for sure. So if people wanted more training, aside from coming to the Integrative Sex Therapy Institute with us, where they can learn more about how to become a certified sex and couples therapist, is there a place where they can dig in a little bit deeper to learn from you about how to be a kink competent therapist?
Well, through supervision, of course, from my supervisees.
Mm-hmm.
I teach here and there. There's if they go to the Denver Family Institute website, there's a webinar series that have been done every Saturday, or every one Saturday a month. We have speakers on they're 2-hour webinars on a variety of different topics. I just did one on libido. We'll have one on kink next year. So if they get on the mailing list, that'll be coming. There aren't as many great places to get training and education on kink as I would like.
No, and so we are going to have you do an online course at ISTE, at the Integrative Sex Therapy Institute, because I think you're absolutely right. I don't think there's enough. There's enough, and I don't think it's specific enough either to what you offer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we'll have to talk more about that. Okay, so Dr. Neal, any last thoughts about your chapter, or about becoming a kink competent therapist, or about kink in general for people out there who might be kinky therapists?
Yeah, I always think about FetLife. So FetLife.com, FetLife, it's like fetish life, right? It's amazing to me how the world has changed because of the internet when it comes to kink. Because if you go back 20 or 30 years, there really wasn't community. And that what was really underground. Whereas today, you could go to FetLife, I think FetLife has almost 10 million members now. It's like the social, it's the Facebook of social, or it's the Facebook for kinky people. It's social networking and with a lot of resources and things. But there's so many things now available to folks online, because community is an important part of feeling normal, and over being isolated and feeling uncomfortable. So when folks get to be on some of these online communities, I just think it's really helpful. And that's one of the ways we have grown and changed as a culture and society over the last 15 or 20 years.
Yeah. And do you think that that's one of the things that kinky therapists should do as well? It's join places like that?
So therapists that are kinky?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think therapists that are kinky they're pretty far ahead of the curve. Yeah, Vet Life is great, but there's a lot of places too for kinky therapists. Being a kinky therapist is a tricky thing because people don't want to be kinky in public with their clients, right? So it's a hard thing for some kinky therapists that I work with.
Yeah. We should have a whole course on that, like how to deal with that, and maybe start like a support group or something.
Because it goes across kink, it rolls into people in open relationships, nudists. Pick your thing. Therapists don't want to see their clients; they're a thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And most clients, some clients don't want to see their therapist. Some don't care.
Yeah, the therapist in the dungeon. It's a whole new world.
Uh-huh.
It's a whole complicated thing. Well, more about that next time.
Good.
So, I want to thank you, Neil, for being here and for talking about your chapter and for sharing your wisdom with us in this book. Is really a high point for me to have you and you and Amanda to share in Integrative Sex and Couples Therapy, because it really personifies what it means to be an integrative therapist.
Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome. And for those of you who want more of Dr. Neil Cannon, can you just tell people how to find you? Maybe give them a link to find out more about supervision and to find out more about your work.
Sure. You can just go to my website. It's really simple. It's drcannon.com, and it's spelled out DoctorCannon.com. And if they're trying to find the webinars at Denver Family Institute, it's just denverfamilyinstitute.org.
Perfect. Thanks, Neil.
You're welcome.
And for those of you who want to find the book, Integrative Sex and Couples Therapy, you can find it on Amazon or anywhere books are sold, including PepsiPublishingandmedia.com and my website, drtammynelson.com. If you're interested in becoming a certified sex and couples therapist, you can go to ISTI-training.com. That's Integrative Sex Therapy Institute training.com, ISTI training.com. to find out more about Dr. Neil Cannon and the rest of our brilliant faculty instructors. Please come and ask me at Tammy at drtammynelson.com more about how to take a class online or hopefully someday again in person. And until we meet again, thanks, Neil. It's always a pleasure. Bye, everybody.